Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Sreshtha, Purposefully Passionate about Domestic Abuse Awareness. The intent of this series is to raise awareness in respect of mental and emotional abuse. Everyone understands what physical abuse is, but in respect of the mental and emotional aspects, sometimes we are not easily able to identify flags, signs, triggers, or even when we are in the relationship, we are not sure how to safely exit the relationship if that is what is required. So, in this series, we intend to bring awareness to that. I have survivors, I have professionals, I have healers, and today I am welcoming back a professional on the series, Mrs. Denise Jittan-Johnson, who is a clinical psychologist and contributed to episodes 8 and 9. So if you missed those episodes, there are a wealth of information in them. Make sure you go back and watch them. I will give you a short synopsis of her bio today, but her entire bio will be in the description box below. So Mrs. Denise Jittan-Johnson is a clinical psychologist in practice since 2011. Her practice focuses on assisting persons through phase-of-life challenges, occupational and academic problems, and various clinical issues. She utilizes a trauma-informed approach to therapy, treating adults, adolescents, and children. Mrs. Jittan-Johnson is also a consultant psychologist and clinical supervisor for the Rape Crisis Society of Trinidad and Tobago and an active member of the Franciscan Institute Trauma Team since 2014, offering support both locally and regionally, providing psychological first aid in the aftermath of social and natural disasters. So I am very, very excited to welcome back Denise. Welcome back. How have you been doing?
Back. I have been good managing pandemic life as we all are. But thank you so much for having me back.
Yes, and I am really excited because anytime Denise is here, the conversation always flows and she introduces new things that I haven't introduced into this series before. Today, I asked her to come to talk to us about enablement. So enablement is something that I really was not aware of until maybe last year. In my own life, someone had said to me, you have to figure out how you are enabling this person, because in you doing that, you are preventing that person from their own spiritual growth and journey. So enablement to me, and this is my understanding of it, can take many forms, whether somebody is not working and you constantly give them money, or if you are constantly doing things for them, which prevents them from building those skills on their own. And when the person said that to me, I really took it to heart, because in my mind, I thought I was protecting the person. But in fact, I was preventing them from their own journey and building the skills that they needed. And it really was an eye-opener for me. And I realized we haven't spoken about that. So I asked Denise from a psychological perspective to come and explain exactly what enablement is. It may not be what I just described. That's just my own understanding. And to help us work through how this lives in our lives and what we can do to stop it if it is we are also doing it. So, Denise, tell us, what is enablement in the context of domestic abuse?
Yes. So, and I really think you did a good job with your definition, because the simplest way to describe enablement is just what you said. Putting things in the person's way, like if it is that they aren't able to build the skills necessary to be able to leave the situation that they're in. Yeah. So if it is we're enabling the situation, you're really robbing them of that opportunity of self-growth and that opportunity to build in that resilience that they need to make that transition from victim to survivor. Yeah. Because when we're thinking about a person who has been a victim of domestic abuse, domestic violence, this person really does not have that space of self-direction. They don't have that space of believing that they can make decisions on their own and act on their own accord, because throughout the process of becoming a victim, they've been stripped of that. Yeah. And if it is that they're just turning to another person for answers and they're just turning to another person for support and help, then they're not developing that own self-efficacy that's needed to make that transition into survivorship. Yeah.
That's such an interesting thing, because sometimes as friends we think we're providing support, but sometimes in providing that support, maybe we are not helping the person as much as we could, because a lot of persons, like as a friend who I have had friends in these situations and I have wanted to help them, but to me they had to come to their own realization that they wanted to exit the relationship or treat with whatever the issue was. And you're making me think about if it is the part that we play in respect of enablement, if I actually played that part, I'm not sure.
Yeah, because when we're thinking about enablement, now that's such a loaded word, but when we're thinking about continuing what this cycle of abuse is, in a lot of ways, as friends and as family members, you see a loved one going through this and you want to break down doors, barge in, take them out if it is they want to come or not, drag them out kicking and screaming, pack their clothes and leave, making that decision for them. But so many times when somebody else makes that decision for them to leave, they end right back up in the situation. They go back because we have this space where their autonomy, again, even if you had the best intention of protecting, their autonomy was stifled. So that in a sense is facilitating this cycle of abuse if we're taking away that person's autonomy. And there are a lot of things, if we're thinking about this now, not just on this individual level, but even thinking about it on a societal level, there are so many things that enable this cycle of abuse to continue. Yeah. So if it is we're thinking, and I know I always go back to this, but our society is literally built on this backdrop of colonialism and slavery and indentureship and forced servitude. And it's that backdrop of our society, of our culture, that kind of facilitates these thoughts about gender equality, gender imbalance, these ideas of where a woman's place is, what a man is supposed to be. All of these myths and these frames that our culture comes with has a big influence on creating this cycle of enablement of abuse. Yeah. Is that we have this idea that men are supposed to be the strong ones, they're supposed to be the providers, they're supposed to be the powerful ones. We have women who are supposed to be more docile, less amenable, less just more accepting and willing to take on their role as caretaker, as homemaker. Now this is a role that's on women, even in the absence of, if it is that they're just a homemaker, or if it is they're a homemaker with a job, is just women are expected to fill these roles, whether or not you're employed outside of the home or not. So it's all of these myths and expectations of what gender roles are, of what relationships are supposed to look like, what marriages are supposed to look like, how we raise our children, that condone and enable these myths to continue. Yeah.
Right. So how does enablement make abuse thrive in terms of a partner relationship? So we spoke about it at a societal level and even outward from the relationship. But is there anything a victim can do to stop enabling the abuse, or is there no way other than planning the safe exits and all of that?
Mm-hmm. So when it comes to stopping this enablement cycle of abuse, it's this space of recognition of the victim that the abuse isn't their fault. Because one of the hallmark signs of abuse, especially emotional abuse, is this ingrained belief that the victim has that they are responsible for the actions of the perpetrator. And that belief and that stance is what facilitates this perpetuation. Yeah, it facilitates this idea that it's my fault. It facilitates this idea that if I'm just a little better at X, then they wouldn't behave in this way. Yeah, it facilitates this idea of you striving for perfection so that you can manage the behavior of the other person. And in doing that, again, you're enabling this cycle because you are becoming this person who believes that you have control over how this person chooses to interact with you. You then, if you think that, then you accept the blame that this abuse is my fault. And in accepting the blame, it is enabling the abuser to continue, because that is exactly the narrative that the abuser takes. If you didn't talk back, if you didn't act this way, if you didn't go out dressed that way, if you didn't look at that person in this way, it's all casting blame on the victim. And as long as the victim is accepting that blame, that cycle can continue. And it's this space, if we want to think about what a person who is in an abusive situation can do to shift that cycle up, is this space of being able to open your eyes and recognize that this is not your fault. That no matter how badly you behave, no matter how awful you, the victim, however awful it is that you are as a person, hypothetically, there's no situation where it is okay for somebody to act in an abusive manner towards you. And once you get that space, the space of self-efficacy, the space of realizing your own worth, then that cycle of abuse can start shifting. Yeah, because as the victim becomes more empowered, those coercive tactics that the abuser has becomes less effective, because it becomes this space where those hurtful words is like water off a duck's back, and not getting in. It's not having the effect of disempowerment, of reinforcing this idea of vulnerability. It doesn't penetrate. So then the abuse cycle can start to shift and change.
Right. It's so interesting, all the things you talk about, especially when you speak to self-worth and knowing your self-worth and changing how you think or how you feel or how someone else's words make you feel, because those are all of the things we have spoken about on this series, not really under professional heading, but just general things we have spoken about that you could heal. And it's nice that you have affirmed that those things under professional lens also are also endorsed. And I want to ask you though, so you talk about not letting words and stuff penetrate, right? So sometimes women in these situations, they kind of go numb. So in that numb phase, the person could say whatever and you just kind of like on autopilot. But I'm trying to figure out if that is really a healthy space to be, that numb phase, because the person is still doing whatever they were doing before. It's just that you are not reacting to it.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it that to get past or to move into survivor mode, we have to figure out how to actually come out of the numbness?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that numbness, it could be twofold, because you can only numb out for so long. Yeah. So yes, you get to this phase where you realize that these words aren't penetrating. And it's in that space of not being as reactive to the abuser's tactics. That's the space where you start to build up the resilience to act, to remove yourself from the situation. It's really important to pay attention as well to this fact that once the victim is not being as reactive to those tactics, there's the potential for the abuser to escalate the level of hurt that they're trying to inflict, be it through words, be it through action. So it's really important for that space to, once we're changing things up, for spaces of safety to be established as well. So like we would have spoken about in other episodes, this idea of creating a safety plan, of being able to build your resource network as you're becoming more empowered to be able to leave the situation, if that's the space that you're in. Because once you start opening your eyes to these spaces of abuse, once you start realizing and labeling it as abuse, because sometimes you don't even realize it's abusive until you start to really see that change in yourself, you're numbing out. Because if we're thinking it again from this societal belief, is that we as a culture have normalized a lot of behavior that could fall under the category of abuse. So you yourself mightn't even think that I'm in an abusive situation until, you know, something starts opening your eyes to the fact that this isn't right, this is wrong, this is different. My other colleagues don't experience this, friends don't experience this, why am I experiencing this? So once you start opening your eyes to that and starting to make changes, it's really important for you to have that safety plan and safety network in place to be able to either make changes in your relationship, if it is that your partner realizes that, hey, this is wrong, I can't keep doing this, and then you work toward change together. Or if there's that lack of insight, working toward change yourself, and then empowering to be able to move away from that.
Yes, I think that the latter one you spoke about is most person's dream, you know, that we both realize, okay, something is wrong and we both work towards it. But unfortunately, at least in the persons I have spoken to, you know, one partner would have wanted those things, and maybe the change comes sometimes for a short period of time, and it just goes back. Yeah, but I'm really glad you spoke about too that being safe when you are shifting from that victim mode into survivor mode, or you are deciding, okay, no, I am not going through this anymore. Because that is one of the most important things I speak about in the series, always making whatever you are doing that you have a safety plan or a safety cushion around you, because you never know, especially in the mental and emotional aspects of the abuse. It's not that it could never turn physical. Sometimes it escalates at the point where the person believes that they're going to lose you, unfortunately. So it's always very important to have that. And I'm really glad that you brought up that point.
So on that note, I think when we're thinking about building your safety plan, safety network, I think that's when we start thinking about our roles of helpers and friends and family in our role of enabling this cycle of abuse. because we spoke about that as a friend that wants to drag them out of the space, which is one space of being able of enabling. But another space that enables, that happens so often, I think, in my work with victims of domestic violence and intimate partner violence, one of the first things that usually happens when they start speaking out about the abuse that they've experienced is that those that they go to question their reports. They start to say, dismissing, oh no, he's such a nice guy, he wouldn't ever behave in that way. Or, are you sure you're not just overreacting? And starting to cast doubt in the victim's mind. So in that space, it's really important for friends, for family to recognize if somebody comes to you seeking help, to believe them. Even if for whatever reason you have your whatever doubt you have in your mind, once we start questioning that report of abuse, that starts casting doubt. It sets the victim back into that space, because remember, when we're talking about emotional abuse, they're already in this footing, in this space of believing that it's their fault. So we're putting them back into that mood of thinking when we start casting doubt on what it is that they're reporting. Another thing is being mindful of even how you speak about abuse in general. Sometimes people, Trinidadians, we love to joke about everything. Everything becomes a meme or a comment or a laugh. But being mindful of the jokes that you make in different situations, because if it is, now we don't know our friends' situations, we don't know their lives unless they come to us. But if you're making joke and making light of an abusive situation, then you're no longer a safe person for them to come to. And you're actually enabling this process of abuse. So, if it is that you're in a gathering, when we used to be able to do things like that, but when you're hanging out with friends and somebody might make a joke, hey, what are you doing out here? Go back in the kitchen. The woman's supposed to be out in the kitchen, what are you doing here, Lyman, with the boys? It could be seen as funny or making light of something, but if it is that this person is in a situation of emotional abuse, it hits differently. So being mindful of your own spaces of conversation about abuse, your own spaces of bias in terms of roles of men, roles of women, because if this person is experiencing you in that way, then you're not going to be able to, they're not going to see you as helpful in helping to break this cycle, and helping, and what you're doing is enabling the abuse to continue. Yeah,
those are such salient points, because when I started this series, I actually, maybe in prepping or before I started, I used to have these posts, things not to say and what we should say instead, which is exactly what you are speaking to. The things that we tell persons when they come to us, the first time they come to us, to reach out to say, hey, I'm not really happy. And, the response is something like, are you doing everything to please him? What is going on? We ask things to put the blame or the accountability on the victim who's really trying to reach out. And that person most times already questioning their whole life in their mind because of all the mind games, if it is that is the situation that they are in. And it's such an important point you made to show us how we, in wanting to help, could also be really enabling a cycle of abuse without knowing it, because it's not conscious. We don't intend to enable it, but by the things we say, which we think is normal and we think it's helping, we are actually not helping. And the other point you made, which is something I have believed for a very long time, is if you want to know what is wrong with a society, look at the things the comedians joke about and that we enjoy laughing about, but we really need to fix. And that is a very, very big thing for me when I see how we laugh at each other, making jokes that maybe is meant out of fun, but at the heart of it, there is some core issue or some core hurt. I also wanted to ask you, how do families enable abusers? So, sometimes these things take place, and it may go back to the societal and cultural beliefs. But one of the things that happens is that if you go, for example, if you're the wife and you go to a sister-in-law or a mother-in-law or something like that, and you tell them what is happening, sometimes excuses are made for the perpetrator. So I just wanted to just bring a little bit of awareness in respect of that. And if you could talk a little bit about how family members or even friends of the perpetrator can help enable abuse.
Yeah. So, and that's a really big, I love that you asked that question, because that is one of the biggest stumbling blocks that a lot of victims face, is the response from the family. Is that sometimes it is this dismissive type of thing, making excuses for the perpetrator, normalizing the behaviors, thinking that, oh, well, no, that's just how families are. This is just how we behave. And, you could just deal with it. I dealt with it with my husband. So who are you to not deal with this situation? Another big thing is this idea of once you're married and once you leave the house, you're not coming back. So once you make the decision to leave, is on you. So I'm not going to offer you support. You're a big woman now, you're a big man now. I'm not going to offer any kind of support in terms of helping you get away from the situation. And then another big way that families perpetuate and enable this abuse is this idea of saving face, is this idea of, we don't want to ruin the family name. Nobody can know about X, Y, and Z. And in covering it up and making it a secret, it's actually perpetuating the cycle again. Because oftentimes when it's treated as a secret, the victim now thinks, okay, well, this isn't worth me speaking about. If it is that the victim moves on and it is still kept a secret, then and the perpetrator doesn't get the necessary help that they need because it's a secret, because we can't tarnish the family, they don't get the help that they need, and then another victim could be found. And then the cycle just happens all over again with another person. So this idea of saving face, of making things family secrets, of minimizing complaints and normalizing the experience. So again, with the societal and cultural perceptions of abuse, if it is that we think that this is what is normal, we don't label it as abuse, then the cycle again has a lot of room and space to continue. So as family members, it's important. So as I was talking about looking inward to see how you yourself might be perpetuating the cycle of abuse, looking at your family situation and your family dynamic as well. What are my family's perspectives on abuse? Is this something that is condoning of? Is it something that I can help to shift in my family and my interactions? If we want to do better for the next generation as well.
Wow, those are three so important points again that you raise, especially, I mean, you speak so much to culture, that belief that if you leave, you can't come back home, even if so many things are going on, and you feel that's how you end up feeling caged and you have nowhere to go, and some people end up staying in the relationship. And then the idea of saving face. I actually had a friend recently whose daughter was in a situation where she didn't do anything wrong. It was the male person that he was making innuendos that were not appropriate to a young girl in the home. And the whole concept to the family was, we need to protect this person and save face because we don't want to bring shame to the family. And the girl actually ended up taking a lot of blame for breaking up the family. And that is such a big thing, unfortunately, in our culture, where the name seems so much more important than mental and emotional health. No matter what is going on, we keep these family secrets, and unfortunately, it perpetuates the abuse. And I completely agree with what you said in respect of looking within, because I myself look at myself in respect of how I'm raising my daughter. I mean, I was raised where once you do something wrong, you're going to be yelled at. You might get licks, but I don't beat her. But I have found that if she pushes me in my short temper, sometimes I shout at her. So for me, for myself, I have resolved myself to consciously try not to react like that and to be a little more patient. And I'm a very patient person, but if you have a toddler, you know they could push you.
These push buttons, they have that skill.
Yes. But again, that is such an important point. And I did say it in an episode before, to look at yourself and see what it is you may be doing that may be perpetuating a situation, or may just be a little bit toxic, and resolve within yourself, okay, how do I change this? And by changing it within yourself, especially if you have children, you would be making a change for generations to come. I wanted to ask you too, having contributed so much to this series, what do you think we really need in order to change the cycle of abuse? What is one thing that you think, if everyone decided, I'm going to do this, we could help change the cycle?
I firmly believe that if we're changing society, we're changing persons one at a time. I know it sounds like if it's going to take forever if we take it from that perspective. But if it is individually, if you start thinking about some of the myths and misconceptions that you have about gender, some of the biases that you might have, because all of us have biases. It's impossible to go through life without having some form of bias. But if it is that we start to think about our own ideas, what are the things that we joke about? What are the things that we make light of? How do we have conversations about abuse, about gender imbalance? What do we do when we see or hear neighbors in distress? How do we act? What do we do with it? And start questioning yourself. Yeah, start questioning those myths and those biases and those beliefs. Start questioning the way that you act and how you respond to those situations. Because once you start changing the way that you engage with certain conversations, you're changing other people as well. So it becomes this ripple effect. So if it is that you change your perspective, you interrupt problematic beliefs that others may have, you challenge certain things that are norm or expectations, and you start to call it out. You're changing one other person, and then that one other person is changing others, and it becomes this bigger ripple effect in being able to shift and change culture. Starting to pay attention to even how we speak to our children, how we engage our children, what we see as acceptable and as okay. So for example, now I am a strong advocate for empowering parents to raise empowered kids. So if it is that we can raise a generation of children who are empowered, who believe that not only our girls, but our boys as well, who believe that their voice and their opinion matters, who believe that they count and they can speak up for injustices, all of that is going to change societal culture and beliefs. So when I think about it, it really starts with the small things, in terms of when our little boys are crying, we're not going to tell them, hey, suck it up, boys, don't cry, stop that. No, you allow our young men to voice their opinions when they're feeling sad or when they're discontent with things in a healthy way. We teach them how to communicate their feelings in an effective way. When it comes to even our young girls and our kids in general, teaching them about what we do with big emotions, teaching them how to calm themselves down, teaching them how to be nice to themselves and how to be nice to other people, teaching them about what counts as private spaces. It's like, you're not allowed to touch people there, because this is a running conversation that my 3-year-old and I now have, because he's realizing the idea of private space. So he asks, are shoulders private spaces? It's like, well, no, you could touch somebody on their shoulder, but ask them first. It's like, are belly buttons private spaces? It's like, yes, belly buttons are private spaces. So, teaching them how to respect their own bodies so that they can respect others as well. And it sounds like, these little trivial conversations or these little things that happen day to day. But what that is doing is actually teaching them how to be nice people. So if we can break even the cycle of, I'm always talking about this, our historical legacy that comes with us. If it is that we can stop breaking that cycle and allowing our younger generations to have effective ways of communicating their feelings, have effective ways of resolving conflict, have effective ways of respecting their own bodies and other person's bodies, then that's shifting culture and belief right there too.
Yeah, sometimes I think we're on the same wavelength, because the two things you spoke of, the first one, just changing one person at a time, which is one of the reasons I did this too. I mean, I'm not a popular person, but I just thought if I could just help one person out of a bad relationship, an abusive relationship, I would have made a difference. And I firmly believe in changing the same, exactly what you said, one person at a time, whoever is receptive to the message, because not everybody would be, but whoever is receptive, that those are the persons who would be attracted to you. Well, this is what I believe. And we could try to change culture. Yeah. And the other thing you spoke about, which is through our children, which is one of my great beliefs as well. I really believe that, for me, I personally believe that to change things, we really need to start with our children. Exactly what you said again, empowering them, teaching them how to live, because we weren't taught how to live. We weren't taught about relationships. We weren't taught about life. We were taught about surviving. But life is so much more than surviving to me. It's such a beautiful experience, and everybody we meet has so much to offer you. And if we can just learn to appreciate everyone in the most respectful way, I think we would be a much better society. So I always enjoy talking to you, like 100%.
Well, thank you. I enjoy being here too.
Is there anything else you want to share? You would be my final professional episode. So is there anything else you want to share with the audience before we close?
I definitely, what you said just now is this recognition of changing one space at a time. If it is that we help one person get out of a domestically abusive situation, it's not just that one person that you're helping, it's their family afterwards. It's their extended family, their mothers, brothers, sisters, cousins, because you're helping them to shift perspective. It's the children that you're helping as well, because now they are not going to be in a situation that's unhealthy. Because what I know as a psychologist is, statistically, if you grow up in an abusive home, chances are as an adult, your home may be abusive as well. Either you would be a victim of abuse or a perpetrator of abuse yourself. So one family at a time, one person at a time, one perspective at a time, it is powerful and it has a ripple effect in so many different spaces. So keep doing the work that you're doing. I love being here with you myself. So in any way that I could continue to support you in the work that you're doing, I will be so excited for it too.
I'm really so grateful for that and for you just offering your time to come and share with us so many wisdoms. You always bring such important discussion points to the episodes. And again, I'm really, really grateful for all that you have contributed. And I hope whatever it is, there's so much more things I want to do. And maybe, hopefully, we could work together again in the future. You are such a blessing. So, guys, if it says you are in or know someone in a domestically abusive situation, in Trinidad, the number to call is 800-SAVE. I also have a list of organizations that help persons in these situations in different countries at the end of the episode. And I also encourage therapy is something I completely believe in. And Denise is a clinical psychologist. So if it is you need a therapist, she is one to call. I will have all her information, in the description box below. And I hope that whatever journey that you are on, that you find healing. So that is it for the end of this episode. I will see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.